She sucked the rattlesnake venom from between the cowboy's legs. Then, the morning sun rose slowly over the desert, painting the land in shades of gold and orange. The air was dry and warm, and a gentle breeze whispered across the dusty plains. On the edge of the ranch, a cowboy moved carefully, checking the fences and making sure everything was in order. He was tall, strong, and weathered from years of work under the sun. His hands were rough, and his boots had walked miles across the desert. He had been through many challenges before, but today, no one could have prepared him for what was about to happen. Nearby, a woman followed him. She was not a cowboy, but she had a sharp mind and a brave heart. She was visiting the ranch to learn about life in the desert, to understand the work, and maybe to help a little along the way. She admired the cowboy's skill and patience, but she also knew that the desert could be dangerous. Every step in the dry sand could hide a snake, a sharp rock, or a sudden hole. She had grown up learning to be careful, but nothing could have prepared her for the moment when danger struck so suddenly. The cowboy was bending down to fix a loose wire in the fence. He was humming a tune, enjoying the calm morning, when suddenly a sharp rattle sounded from the grass nearby. The woman froze. Her heart beat faster. She knew that sound. It was the warning of a rattlesnake. The cowboy did not notice it at first. He reached down with his hands, touching the wire, unaware that the snake was coiled nearby, ready to defend itself. In a flash, it struck. Its fangs sank into the most sensitive part of his body, and a hot, burning pain shot through him. The cowboy let out a sudden cry, falling backward onto the dusty ground. His face twisted in pain, and sweat formed on his forehead immediately. The woman gasped. She rushed to him, fear and panic racing through her mind. She knew that rattlesnake venom could be deadly if not treated immediately. The nearest hospital was miles away, and there was no time to waste. She looked at his face, pale and sweating, and she realized that she was the only one who could act quickly to save him. The cowboy tried to speak, but the pain made his voice weak. He could barely say her name. The woman's mind raced. She had read about first aid for snake bites, but this situation was worse than any book or story she had ever heard. The venom was spreading fast, and every second mattered. She took a deep breath, trying to steady her hands. She told herself that she could do this. She had to. There was no other choice. She knelt beside him, her eyes locked on his. "You're going to be okay," she said, her voice firm even though her heart was pounding. "I won't let this stop you. Just stay with me. Focus on me." The cowboy groaned, clutching his leg, and she could see the swelling starting almost immediately. She remembered what she had learned about removing venom before it spreads further. It was risky, but if she didn't act, he might lose consciousness. She told him what she was about to do, asking him to trust her completely. He nodded weakly, his eyes filled with pain, fear, and a strange sense of relief that someone was there to help him. She worked quickly, carefully, using the techniques she had learned. She created a makeshift suction with her mouth to remove the venom. The cowboy winced and groaned, but he trusted her. His face was pale and his breathing was shallow, but he stayed alert enough to follow her instructions. She kept talking to him, distracting him from the pain, reminding him to breathe slowly and to keep his mind on something else. The heat of the sun beat down on them, and the desert seemed to hold its breath. Time felt slow, almost as if the world itself was waiting to see if she could save him. She wiped the sweat from her forehead and continued her work, careful not to let fear take over. The cowboy's pain was intense, but the worst of it was being delayed slightly by her quick action. As she worked, she noticed other signs of the venom taking effect. His skin was pale, his lips tinged with blue, and his pulse was rapid but weak. She knew she had to act faster. She kept her hands steady, even though they trembled slightly from the stress. Every movement mattered. Every second counted. She remembered the desert plants nearby. Some of them could be used to clean the wound and slow the venom temporarily. She grabbed a few leaves, crushed them gently, and applied them carefully, hoping to buy more time. The cowboy felt the slight relief almost immediately, and he managed a small smile, grateful for her presence and courage. "I've got you," she whispered, her voice soft but determined. "Just hold on, we're going to get through this together." The cowboy's eyes met hers, filled with gratitude and awe. He had faced danger before, but never had anyone shown such bravery on his behalf. He realized how much he depended on her quick thinking, her courage, and her calm in the face of life-threatening danger. The woman knew they could not stay there. Even with the venom partially removed, the cowboy was in danger. They needed help, and it was far away. She helped him sit up slowly, supporting his weight. Every step was careful, measured. She kept talking to him, reminding him to breathe and to stay focused. He leaned on her, trusting her completely. As they started moving toward the main ranch, the cowboy's strength began to waver. The venom was still affecting him, and each step was painful. The woman encouraged him, guiding him through the rough desert terrain. She used her knowledge of the land to find the easiest path, avoiding sharp rocks and thorny bushes. The desert seemed endless, but she refused to give up. She remembered every first aid lesson she had learned and applied it in real time, adjusting to the cowboy's needs as they went. The sun climbed higher in the sky, making the heat unbearable, but she ignored it, focused only on keeping him alive. At one point, the cowboy stumbled and nearly fell. She caught him just in time, holding him steady. "You're doing great," she said, her voice firm. "Keep going, we're almost there." They moved slowly but steadily. The cowboy's breathing was shallow and his eyes showed fatigue, but he kept going because she would not let him stop. Her determination became his anchor, giving him strength he did not know he had. As they walked, she noticed signs of dehydration. She gave him small sips of water, careful not to overdo it. She talked to him constantly, keeping his mind focused on the moment, not the pain. Every word she said was meant to reassure him, to keep panic away. The sun reached its peak, and the desert was blazing hot. Sweat poured down both of them, and the cowboy's legs shook from weakness. Yet, despite the exhaustion, he moved forward because she would not let go. Her courage inspired him, giving him hope even in the worst of circumstances. Finally, they reached a spot where the woman could signal for help. She waved a cloth and shouted, hoping someone would notice. Minutes felt like hours, but she never lost focus. The cowboy leaned on her, barely able to stand, but he knew they were close to safety. Then, in the distance, a vehicle appeared. Relief washed over the woman and the cowboy. Help was on its way. She guided him carefully to the open area, making sure he stayed conscious until the rescuers arrived. As the medics reached them, she explained what had happened, detailing her quick actions and the condition of the cowboy. They praised her bravery and skill, amazed that she had managed to stabilize him under such dangerous circumstances. The cowboy, weak but conscious, looked at her with gratitude that words could not express. For the first time in hours, he could relax slightly, knowing he was in capable hands. He realized how close he had come to disaster, and how much he owed his life to her courage and quick thinking. The woman smiled faintly, exhausted but proud, knowing she had done everything she could to save him. The desert seemed quieter now, as if it were acknowledging their struggle and survival. The sun began its slow descent, casting long shadows over the sand. The cowboy was safe for now, and the woman had proven that ordinary people could perform extraordinary acts when faced with life-threatening danger. As the medics loaded him into the vehicle, he whispered his thanks, his voice full of emotion. "I don't know what I would have done without you," he said. She simply nodded, knowing that the experience had changed both of their lives forever. The ride to the hospital was tense but hopeful. The woman stayed by his side, holding his hand, encouraging him to stay conscious. She thought about how fragile life could be, how quickly it could change, and how bravery and quick thinking could make the difference between life and death. By the time they reached safety, both were exhausted. The cowboy was weak but alive. The woman felt a deep sense of relief and accomplishment. She had faced fear head-on and had come through it with courage and skill. And as they looked at each other, they knew that their bond had grown stronger, forged in the heat of danger and the test of life itself. The desert sun set completely, leaving a warm glow over the land. The cowboy was safe, and the woman had proven that one act of bravery could save a life. And in that quiet, glowing desert, they both knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The cowboy lay on the stretcher in the back of the vehicle, his body still trembling from the venom and the shock of the bite. His breathing was uneven, and beads of sweat covered his face. Even though the woman had removed some of the venom and kept him alive, he was still in serious danger. Every second counted, and the medics worked quickly, giving him oxygen and monitoring his heart. The woman stayed close, her hands gently holding his. She refused to leave his side, refusing to let the fear of the unknown paralyze her. The desert was behind them now, but the real challenge had only begun. The venom could still spread and cause serious damage. She could see the worry in the cowboy's eyes, mixed with gratitude and disbelief that he was still alive. "Stay with me," she whispered softly, pressing a cool cloth to his forehead. "You're strong. You've survived worse, and you're going to get through this too." The cowboy tried to speak, but the words came out in a weak mumble. He looked at her, trying to smile despite the pain. His eyes shone with trust. He knew she was the reason he was still alive, and he felt a mixture of fear, relief, and admiration for her courage. The vehicle bounced along the uneven desert road, the wind carrying dust and sand into the air. The woman kept talking to him, telling him stories about the ranch, about the horses, about the little things that made life in the desert special. Her voice was calm and steady, like an anchor in a storm. She could see that it worked. The cowboy's breathing began to even out, and his grip on her hand tightened slightly, a small but hopeful sign. She knew she had to keep him awake. Sleep could be dangerous right now, making it easier for the venom to overwhelm him. She gently pinched his arm, made him focus on her eyes, and asked him questions about the ranch, the desert, even silly things like what he wanted for breakfast once he recovered. Each answer, however small, was a victory. Minutes felt like hours. The woman's mind raced with every detail she had learned about first aid for snake bites. She recalled reading that keeping the patient calm and immobile could slow the venom spread. She reminded herself to stay composed and continue her efforts. Her hands never stopped moving. She adjusted the tourniquet carefully, checking the bite site, and wiped the sweat from his skin. Every movement had a purpose. The cowboy groaned softly as pain surged through him. His body was weak, and his leg throbbed violently. The woman applied pressure to the bite area with a cool cloth she had soaked in water. The cold helped dull the burning sensation slightly, but it was not enough to stop the pain completely. She leaned close to him, whispering encouragements. "I'm right here. You're going to make it. You're too strong to give up now." He tried to smile at her, but the pain made it difficult. His hands shook as he clutched hers. He had been through many dangers before, storms, wild animals, even fights, but nothing had tested him like this. He had faced danger before, but now he realized that courage alone was not enough. He needed her bravery, her knowledge, her presence. She was his lifeline. The sun climbed higher in the sky outside, shining through the windows of the vehicle. The heat was intense, and the desert wind tried to creep in, but inside, the woman created a small bubble of calm. She kept speaking to him, telling stories about past adventures on the ranch, about funny incidents with the horses, and even about her own fears. She wanted him to focus on something other than the pain, to keep his mind busy. She noticed his breathing becoming shallow again, and her heart skipped a beat. She pressed a hand to his chest, feeling the rapid, uneven beat. She realized that they could not waste any more time. They needed help soon. She adjusted his position carefully, making sure he was comfortable and that his airway was clear. She encouraged him to take slow, deep breaths, counting softly with him to create a rhythm. At one point, he began to drift in and out of consciousness. Panic flared inside her, but she forced herself to stay calm. She shook him gently, keeping her voice firm but soothing. "Stay with me. Focus on me. You're safe now. You're going to make it." Her words seemed to reach him. His eyes fluttered open and he gave a faint nod. The woman remembered a tip she had read about keeping patients alert after a snake bite, conversation and gentle stimulation. She asked him to describe the ranch in detail, to tell her about the colors of the desert, the sounds of the horses, the feel of the sand under his boots. He obeyed weakly, his voice hoarse but steady, and she felt a surge of hope. Every word he spoke was a sign of life, a sign that he could survive this. Time dragged on. The road seemed endless, but she refused to let despair creep in. She shifted slightly, adjusting the bandages and checking the bite area. The swelling had slowed a little, but it was still serious. She reminded herself that the worst part of snake venom could take hours to appear fully, and she had to keep him stable until medical help arrived. As the vehicle bounced along, she noticed his lips turning pale again, and her stomach tightened. She pressed her hand against his cheek, keeping him focused. "You're doing amazing, just a little longer. Help is on the way." The cowboy tried to squeeze her hand but was too weak. She held it firmly, letting him know she was there. Fear and pain were strong, but her calmness and determination created a small island of safety. He clung to that safety, finding strength in her presence. Outside, the desert stretched endlessly, a sea of sand and rock. But inside, the woman created a space where courage and hope lived. She kept track of the time, counting minutes silently, knowing that every second mattered. She reminded herself not to panic, not to let fear take over, and to keep her hands steady. The cowboy groaned again, pain flashing across his face. She leaned closer, speaking softly. "You're not alone. You're stronger than this. Just hold on." She rubbed his arm gently, creating a rhythm that helped distract him from the pain. Her voice, her touch, her presence, they became a shield against the venom's effect. She remembered the desert plants she had used earlier and realized that some could help reduce swelling further. She carefully crushed a few leaves she had collected, placing them gently near the bite site, making sure nothing contaminated the wound. The cowboy winced, but the cooling sensation provided slight relief. Hours felt like days as they continued toward help. The woman refused to let exhaustion stop her. Her hands were raw, her body aching, but her mind was sharp. She kept the cowboy talking, asking him to describe his favorite horses, the smell of the desert after rain, and even the music he liked to hum. Each story, each word kept his mind engaged, keeping him alive. Finally, she spotted a small dust cloud on the horizon. Her heart leapt. Could it be help? She shouted, waving her arms to attract attention. The cowboy squinted, trying to see through the heat and dust. His energy was low, but he nodded weakly, trusting her instincts completely. The vehicle approached, and soon a group of medics appeared, running toward them with equipment in hand. Relief washed over the woman and the cowboy. She guided him carefully, keeping him conscious until the professionals took over. The medics praised her bravery and quick thinking, amazed that she had managed to keep him alive under such dangerous circumstances. The cowboy looked at her, his eyes filled with gratitude, fear, and disbelief. He realized how close he had come to losing his life and how much he owed to her courage and skill. She simply smiled, exhausted but proud. She had acted without hesitation, without fear, and had done everything she could to save him. As they lifted him into the vehicle for the final journey to the hospital, she stayed by his side, holding his hand. She whispered encouragements, reminding him that he was strong, that he was safe now, and that he had survived the worst. The ride continued, tense but hopeful. The cowboy's condition was still serious, but her efforts had given him a fighting chance. She reflected on the ordeal, thinking about how quickly life could change, how fragile it was, and how courage and determination could save a life in even the most desperate circumstances. By the time they reached the hospital, the cowboy was stable, though weak. The woman had never felt more relief. She had faced fear, danger, and uncertainty, but she had not faltered. Her quick thinking, calmness, and bravery had made all the difference. As the doctors and nurses took over, the cowboy turned to her, trying to speak. I don't know what I would have done without you," he managed, his voice weak but sincere. She smiled softly, nodding, knowing that sometimes words were not enough to express the depth of gratitude and admiration that flowed between them. The desert outside glowed with the late afternoon sun, warm and calm. Inside, a quiet sense of accomplishment and relief filled the room. The cowboy was safe, and the woman had proven that ordinary people could perform extraordinary acts of heroism when lives were at stake. And in that moment, as the cowboy's eyes closed in exhaustion and relief, she realized something important. Bravery was not just about strength or skill. It was about presence, calmness, and the willingness to act when it mattered most. She had learned that in the most intense way possible, and the cowboy's life had been saved because of it. The cowboy was awake now, but his body was still weak and trembling from the rattlesnake bite. The medics had stabilized him enough to move, but he could feel the lingering pain in his leg, sharp and burning with every tiny movement. The desert sun was high overhead, making the heat even more intense. Sweat poured down both his and the woman's faces as they prepared to continue the journey to the nearest hospital. There was no time to rest. The venom could still spread, and every minute mattered. The woman knelt beside him, adjusting the makeshift bandage she had placed on the bite. "You're doing really well," she said, trying to keep her voice calm and steady. "I know it hurts, but we're almost out of this. Just keep moving with me." The cowboy tried to smile, but the effort was painful. His breathing was shallow, and every step made his leg throb violently. He gritted his teeth and nodded, trusting her completely. He had no choice but to rely on her courage and knowledge. They began the slow walk toward a small dirt road that led to the main highway. The woman supported him, wrapping her arm around his waist, while he leaned heavily on her shoulder. Each step was careful, measured, and painful. The desert sand shifted beneath their feet, making the walk even more difficult. The heat pressed down on them like a heavy blanket. The sun reflected off the sand, making it almost blinding. The woman offered him small sips of water from the canteen she carried. "Here, drink slowly," she said. "We need to keep you hydrated." He accepted the water, swallowing carefully. His lips were dry and cracked, and he shivered slightly from weakness. He felt ashamed of how helpless he was, but the woman would not let him think like that. "You've already done so much," she said softly. "The fact that you're still moving shows how strong you are." As they moved, the woman kept an eye on the surroundings. The desert was beautiful but unforgiving. Rocky outcrops jutted out from the sand, and thorny bushes threatened to scratch or trip them. She led him carefully around obstacles, choosing the smoothest path she could find. The cowboy followed her instructions, trusting her completely. At one point, the cowboy stumbled, almost falling forward onto the sand. The woman caught him just in time, gripping his arm tightly. "It's okay," she said gently. "I've got you, just take it slow, one step at a time." He exhaled, his body shaking with pain and relief. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice hoarse. I don't know what I would have done without you." "You don't have to think about that now," she replied. "Just focus on moving. We'll get through this together." Minutes passed, each one stretching painfully long. The cowboy's legs swelled more with every step, the pain pulsing like a drumbeat in his body. The woman adjusted the bandage again, gently massaging the muscles around it to improve circulation. "I know it hurts," she said softly, "but I promise you're getting stronger with every step. Just keep going." She talked constantly, telling him stories about the ranch, the horses, and the animals in the desert. She reminded him of moments when he had helped others, moments of bravery that he had not noticed before. Her words created a rhythm, a small distraction from the pain, and kept his mind focused on something other than his fear. The desert seemed endless, a vast sea of sand and rocks. The heat shimmered off the ground, making it hard to see clearly. But the woman refused to let the harsh environment slow them down. She led him carefully, scanning the horizon for any signs of help or shelter. The cowboy groaned, his body exhausted from the walk. His legs felt like lead and his arms trembled with the effort of holding himself up. I can't go much farther," he said weakly. "Yes, you can," the woman replied firmly, her voice filled with determination. "You've come this far, just a little farther. I'm right here. You're not alone." She supported his weight as they moved over a steep incline, the sand sliding beneath their boots. Every step was a struggle, but she encouraged him, adjusting her grip and helping him keep balance. He felt her strength supporting him, and it gave him a courage he had not thought he had left. At one point, the woman noticed a small grove of trees in the distance, offering shade and slightly cooler air. "Look," she exclaimed, "we're almost there. Just a little farther, and we'll rest in the shade." The cowboy focused on the trees, gathering whatever energy he had left. The promise of relief gave him motivation to continue. The woman guided him carefully, making sure he did not stumble on the uneven ground. As they approached the grove, a sudden gust of wind kicked up sand, hitting the cowboy in the face. He winced in pain, and the woman shielded him with her body. "Stay close to me," she said firmly. "I've got you. We're almost there." They reached the shade of the trees, and the woman helped the cowboy sit down on a large rock. He leaned against her shoulder, exhausted but grateful. The heat of the desert was still pressing down, but the shade offered a small comfort. "Take a deep breath," she said softly. "Rest for a moment. You've done so well." The cowboy closed his eyes, letting the brief rest calm him. His body ached from the venom and the effort of walking, but he felt a spark of hope. He had survived the worst, and with the woman by his side, he knew he could continue. She checked his leg carefully. The swelling had not worsened and the makeshift bandage was holding. She applied a bit more pressure and cleaned the area with water. "You're okay for now," she said. "We'll keep moving soon. Just stay strong." While he rested, she kept talking to him, keeping his mind focused on the present. She asked him to describe the ranch, the horses, the colors of the desert at sunset. He obeyed, speaking slowly but clearly. His mind stayed alert, and that was what mattered most. After a few minutes, they prepared to move again. The woman helped the cowboy stand, supporting his weight on her arm. "Just a little more," she said. "We're getting closer every step. I won't let you fall." The path to the highway was still long, but with every step they got closer to safety. The cowboy gritted his teeth, determined to follow her lead. He trusted her completely, knowing she would not let him fail. The sun began to descend slightly, casting long shadows across the desert. The air cooled a little, and the wind softened. It was still hot, but the change in temperature gave them a small relief. The woman encouraged him, using the moment to inspire him to keep moving. As they moved, she noticed his breathing becoming more even. He was still in pain, but his body was responding. The bandage was working, the venom spread was slowing, and he was staying conscious. Her heart lifted with hope. Suddenly, a distant sound reached her ears. The hum of a vehicle, faint but growing louder. She stopped and looked toward the horizon. "Help!" she shouted, waving her arms. The cowboy squinted through the heat haze, trying to see what she was pointing at. The vehicle grew closer, and the woman's heart leapt. Rescue was near. She guided the cowboy carefully toward the approaching help, making sure he stayed upright and alert. Each step was slow but steady. The sound of the vehicle grew louder, and the relief in their hearts was palpable. Finally, the vehicle came into view, a ranger truck moving across the desert road. The driver saw them and stopped quickly. Two men jumped out, rushing toward the cowboy and the woman. The woman explained the situation, describing the bite, the venom, and the cowboy's condition. The rangers nodded, impressed by her bravery and quick thinking. They helped the cowboy into the truck, lifting him gently. The woman stayed close, holding his hand, speaking soothing words to keep him calm. "You're going to be okay," she whispered. "We've made it this far. We're almost there." As the vehicle drove toward the nearest medical center, the cowboy looked at her, his eyes filled with gratitude and admiration. I don't know how to thank you," he said weakly. "You saved my life." "You don't need to thank me," she replied softly. "Just stay strong. That's all that matters now." The journey continued, tense but hopeful. Every bump in the road, every turn of the truck reminded them of the danger they had just survived. The cowboy's body still ached, but his spirit had grown stronger. He had faced death and survived, and he owed it all to the woman who had refused to give up on him. Hours later, they reached the medical center. The doctors and nurses took over, quickly assessing the cowboy and providing the treatment he needed. The woman stepped back, watching as the professionals worked. She felt exhausted but proud. She had acted with courage, calmness, and determination, and her efforts had made all the difference. The cowboy was stabilized and his condition was improving. He looked at her once more, his eyes shining with emotion. You are incredible," he said softly. "I will never forget this." She smiled, a mixture of relief and exhaustion washing over her. "I'm just glad you're safe," she replied. Outside, the desert sun was setting, painting the sky with streaks of orange and pink. The air was cooler, calmer, and peaceful. The cowboy was alive, and the woman had proven that bravery and determination could overcome even the most dangerous situations. And in that moment, as the sun disappeared behind the distant hills, they both understood something important. Courage was not about being fearless. It was about facing danger with a steady heart, taking action when it mattered most, and never giving up on someone in need. The hospital's emergency room was bright and busy, filled with the sounds of monitors beeping and nurses moving quickly from one patient to another. The cowboy was carefully lifted from the ranger's vehicle onto a stretcher. His body was still weak, trembling slightly from the venom, the heat, and the exhausting journey across the desert. The woman stayed by his side, holding his hand firmly, making sure he felt calm and safe. Doctors and nurses rushed around him, checking his vitals and examining the bite. The cowboy groaned as they gently lifted his leg to examine the wound. Pain still radiated from the site, but he remained conscious, his eyes fixed on the woman. He felt a mix of fear and relief, knowing that she had brought him this far. "You've done an incredible job," one of the doctors said to the woman. "We're going to take over now. You kept him alive until help arrived." The woman nodded, trying to smile, but she was exhausted. Her hands were sore from holding him, guiding him, and applying pressure to the bite. Her body ached from the long journey across the desert, but despite her exhaustion, she felt a sense of quiet pride. She had done everything she could to save his life, and that had made all the difference. The cowboy's eyes followed her every movement. Even in his weakened state, he could see the bravery and determination in her face. He realized how close he had come to losing his life and how much he owed to her courage. I don't know how to thank you," he whispered, his voice hoarse but filled with sincerity. "You don't have to," she replied softly. "Just focus on getting better. That's all that matters now." The doctors began administering treatment to neutralize the venom. They gave him fluids, pain medication, and carefully monitored his heart and breathing. The cowboy felt some relief as the sharp pain in his leg began to dull slightly. He still felt weak, but the immediate danger was passing. The woman stayed by his side, speaking softly to him, keeping him awake and making sure he remained calm. "You're doing great," she said, brushing a lock of hair from his forehead. "Just rest your mind. You're safe now. You've made it this far." The cowboy closed his eyes briefly, letting the words comfort him. He thought about the journey they had just endured, the desert, the pain, and the constant danger. He realized that he would not have survived without her presence, her bravery, and her determination. She had faced fear head-on and refused to give up, even when it seemed impossible. Hours passed as the doctors worked to stabilize him. The woman remained at his side, holding his hand, occasionally adjusting the blanket over his legs. She spoke quietly, telling stories, making jokes, and even singing softly to keep his spirits up. The cowboy listened, drawing strength from her calm and steady presence. At one point, the cowboy tried to sit up, but his legs were still weak and he swayed dangerously. The woman immediately supported him, holding him firmly to prevent him from falling. "Slow down," she said gently. "You're still weak. Let the doctors take care of you for now. Focus on resting." He nodded, leaning back against the pillows, and felt a wave of gratitude. He had been through many challenges in his life, but nothing had tested him like this. He had faced death, and he had survived, thanks to the woman who had refused to give up on him. As the evening passed, his condition slowly improved. The swelling in his leg began to go down, and his breathing became more even. The woman continued to stay close, encouraging him to rest and reassuring him that everything was going to be fine. She offered him water, helped him adjust his pillows, and kept his spirits high. The doctors came in periodically to check his progress. Each time, they praised the woman for her quick thinking and bravery. "You saved his life," one of the nurses said. "If you hadn't acted so quickly, he might not have made it." The cowboy listened to their words, feeling both embarrassed and deeply grateful. He had never realized how much courage it took to stay calm and act decisively in such a dangerous situation. He looked at the woman, seeing her strength and determination reflected in her eyes. He realized that he had been saved not just by skill or knowledge, but by someone who truly cared and refused to give up. As night fell, the hospital became quieter. The cowboy rested, still weak but now safe. The woman sat beside him, keeping watch, making sure he remained stable. She thought about the long journey they had taken, the dangers they had faced, and the bravery it had taken to keep him alive. She felt exhausted, but also a deep sense of satisfaction. She had done everything she could, and it had made all the difference. The cowboy opened his eyes slightly, looking at her with a faint smile. "I don't know what I would have done without you," he whispered again. "You don't have to," she said softly. "Just rest, that's all that matters." He closed his eyes again, feeling safe and cared for. For the first time in hours, he allowed himself to relax. The immediate danger had passed, and he could finally rest without fear. The woman stayed by his side, her presence a steady source of comfort and reassurance. The next morning, the cowboy woke feeling slightly stronger. The pain in his leg had diminished, and he could move more easily. The woman had stayed through the night, watching over him, making sure he was comfortable and safe. He felt a deep sense of gratitude and admiration for her courage and dedication. "Good morning," she said softly, smiling at him. "How are you feeling?" "Better," he replied, his voice still weak but steady. "Thanks to you." The doctors checked him again, confirming that he was improving and that the venom had been successfully neutralized. The cowboy felt a wave of relief. He had survived the worst, and he owed it all to the woman who had refused to leave his side. Throughout the day, the woman continued to care for him, offering water, helping him sit up, and encouraging him to eat lightly. She spoke to him gently, keeping his spirits high and ensuring that he did not feel alone. The cowboy felt a deep sense of trust and gratitude. He had faced death, and he had survived, not just because of medical treatment, but because of the bravery, calmness, and determination of someone who truly cared. As the day progressed, the hospital staff praised the woman again for her courage. "You acted quickly and decisively," one of the doctors said. "Your presence and actions made all the difference." The cowboy listened to these words, feeling both humbled and grateful. He realized that heroism was not just about strength or skill, but about compassion, determination, and the willingness to act when it mattered most. By evening, the cowboy was strong enough to sit up more comfortably. The swelling in his leg had gone down significantly and the pain was more manageable. He looked at the woman, feeling a deep sense of gratitude and admiration. "I can't thank you enough," he said softly. "You saved my life." "You don't need to thank me," she replied with a gentle smile. "Just focus on getting better. That's the most important thing." The cowboy rested against the pillows, feeling safe and cared for. The woman stayed by his side, keeping watch, making sure he remained comfortable and reassured. They both reflected on the events of the past day, realizing how fragile life could be and how quickly it could change. Outside, the desert was quiet, the sun setting behind distant hills. Inside the hospital room, the cowboy was safe, and the woman had proven that bravery, determination, and compassion could overcome even the most dangerous situations. As night fell, the cowboy closed his eyes, feeling a sense of peace and safety. He had faced death and survived, thanks to the courage and quick thinking of the woman by his side. She had acted with calmness and determination, refusing to give up even when the situation seemed impossible. In that quiet hospital room, both the cowboy and the woman understood something important. True courage was not about being fearless, but about acting with determination, compassion, and presence when it mattered most. They had faced danger together and in doing so had created a bond of trust and respect that would last a lifetime. The cowboy drifted into a peaceful sleep, finally free from fear. The woman sat beside him, watching over him, her heart filled with quiet pride and relief. They had survived the worst, and their journey had proven that bravery, quick thinking, and human connection could overcome even the most terrifying challenges. And in that hospital room, as the desert night settled outside, both of them knew that life had given them a second chance. A chance to survive, to grow, and to appreciate the power of courage and care in the face of danger. The cowboy woke to the soft light of morning streaming through the hospital window. The events of the past days felt almost like a blur, yet every memory, the rattlesnake bite, the long journey across the desert, the pain and the fear, was vivid in his mind. He turned slightly and saw her sitting in the chair beside his bed, quietly watching him sleep. Relief washed over him, stronger than he had felt in hours. She had been there through it all, refusing to leave his side, and he realized just how much he owed to her courage and determination. "Good morning," she whispered softly, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "How are you feeling?" "Better, thanks to you," he replied, his voice hoarse but steady. A small smile tugged at his lips. He had survived the venom, the heat, the exhaustion, and he owed it all to her. He tried to sit up a little, feeling the lingering ache in his leg. She helped him, steadying his body, keeping him from straining too much. The doctors had checked him through the night and confirmed that the venom was no longer active. His swelling had reduced significantly, his vitals were stable, and the danger was gone. The recovery process had begun, but he still needed rest and care. The woman stayed close, helping him with the simplest tasks, drinking water, adjusting pillows, and even keeping his spirits up with quiet conversation. He looked at her, eyes full of gratitude. "I can't believe I'm still here," he said softly. I wouldn't have made it without you." "You did all the hard work," she replied gently. "I just guided you. You stayed strong even when it hurt so much." He shook his head. "No, it was your courage that saved me. You acted faster than anyone could have expected. You didn't hesitate, not even for a moment. That's what saved my life." She smiled faintly, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. She had acted because it was the right thing to do. Fear had been there, of course, but it hadn't stopped her. She had faced it head-on, and now seeing him safe made every second of struggle worthwhile. As the day progressed, the cowboy's strength improved. He could sit up more comfortably, his breathing was steady, and his pain was manageable. The hospital staff checked on him regularly, praising the woman for her bravery. "You did an incredible job," a nurse said. "You kept him alive until we arrived, and that's extraordinary." The cowboy nodded, his face filled with humility and gratitude. He thought back to the desert, to the moment of the bite, to every step they had taken together across the harsh terrain. He had faced death and survived, but the lesson he carried with him was not just about survival. It was about human courage, compassion, and connection. During a quiet moment, he asked her to tell him more about herself, about her life, and about why she had acted so bravely. She smiled and spoke simply, describing how she had learned to stay calm in emergencies, how she had always believed in helping others, and how she had never hesitated to act when someone's life was at stake. "I didn't think about fear," she said. "I just knew that if I didn't act, you could die, and I couldn't let that happen." He nodded, feeling a mixture of admiration and awe. "You are amazing," he said softly. "I have never met anyone as brave as you." The hospital room became quiet for a while, filled only with the sound of monitors and the occasional shuffle of nurses. The cowboy rested against the pillows, feeling the lingering ache in his leg, but also feeling a growing sense of safety and trust. He realized that life was fragile, that danger could appear without warning, but that true courage and care could overcome even the darkest moments. Over the next few days, the cowboy's condition continued to improve. He regained his strength slowly, able to move more easily, and his pain became less intense. The woman stayed by his side, helping him walk short distances, encouraging him to eat and keeping his spirits high. Their bond grew stronger with every passing moment, built on trust, gratitude, and shared experience. One afternoon, as he sat by the window watching the desert outside, he turned to her. "I keep thinking about that day," he said quietly. "How close I came to not being here. And every time I think about it, I realize that you were my lifeline. I would have been lost without you." "You were never lost," she replied softly. "You were brave and you never gave up. I just helped you along the way." He shook his head. "No, you did more than help. You saved me. You risked everything for me, and I can't forget that." The woman smiled, feeling a mixture of humility and warmth. "I just did what I had to do," she said simply. Over the following days, the doctors cleared him for discharge. He was walking carefully with her support, moving slowly but steadily. The desert outside looked calm and peaceful, a stark contrast to the chaos and danger of the past days. He looked at her, feeling a deep sense of gratitude and respect. "You know," he said softly, "I never realized how much courage it takes to face something like that. I've faced storms, wild animals, and all sorts of dangers, but nothing compares to the fear of death and the strength it takes to overcome it. You taught me that courage isn't just about fighting, it's about caring, acting, and refusing to give up." She smiled, feeling the weight of his words. "Courage can show itself in many ways," she said. "It doesn't have to be loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet, steady, and persistent. That's what matters most." The cowboy nodded thoughtfully, taking in every word. He felt a shift inside himself, a newfound respect for bravery, for human connection, and for the quiet heroism that often went unnoticed. Finally, the day came when he was ready to leave the hospital. The woman helped him gather his things, supporting him carefully as they walked toward the exit. The desert stretched out before them, warm and golden in the late afternoon sun. He felt a deep sense of freedom, relief, and gratitude. "I owe you everything," he said quietly, looking at her. "I don't know how to repay you." "You don't need to repay me," she replied with a gentle smile. "Just live well. That's all the thanks I need." He looked out at the desert, thinking about the journey, the danger, and the courage it had taken to survive. He knew he had been given a second chance at life, a chance he would never take for granted. And he knew that the bond he shared with her, built through fear, determination, and trust, was something rare and precious. As they walked across the sand toward the main road, he took a deep breath of the desert air. It smelled dry and warm, carrying with it the memory of the struggle they had endured. He looked at her, seeing the strength in her posture, the determination in her eyes, and the quiet courage that had saved his life. "You've changed my life," he said softly. "I'll never forget what you did for me. You saved me in ways I can't even explain." "You don't need to explain," she replied. "Just remember this: bravery isn't about not being afraid. It's about acting when it matters most, even when you are afraid. That's how lives are saved." They reached the main road, where a vehicle awaited to take him back to the ranch. He stepped carefully, still feeling weak but stronger with each step. She walked beside him, offering support, encouragement, and reassurance. As the vehicle drove off, he looked back at her one last time, his eyes filled with gratitude and admiration. He realized that he had been lucky to survive the desert, the snake, and the long journey, but luck had only carried him so far. It was her courage, her determination, and her care that had truly saved him. Back at the ranch, he was greeted by friends and fellow cowboys who had feared the worst. They were amazed to see him alive and recovering, and they asked about the woman who had saved him. He spoke of her bravery, her quick thinking, and the unwavering determination that had kept him alive. "She didn't hesitate," he told them. "Not for a second. She stayed calm, acted quickly, and saved my life. I owe her everything." The woman stood quietly, smiling faintly, feeling a sense of satisfaction and pride. She had acted because it was the right thing to do, and now she could see the difference her courage had made. The cowboy's survival, his gratitude, and the bond they shared were all proof that ordinary people could do extraordinary things when faced with life-and-death situations. Days turned into weeks, and the cowboy continued to recover fully. His strength returned, and his leg healed completely. The memory of the bite and the long journey across the desert remained with him, but it was now accompanied by the memory of the woman's courage, the quiet determination that had saved his life, and the bond they had formed. One evening, as the sun set over the desert, he stood outside with her, watching the colors change in the sky. He felt a deep sense of peace, gratitude, and respect. "I will never forget what you did for me," he said softly. "You showed me what true courage is, and you gave me a second chance at life. Thank you." She smiled gently, feeling the warmth of his words. "Just live well," she said softly. "That's all the thanks I need." And in that quiet moment, with the desert stretching endlessly before them, both of them understood something important. Life was fragile, courage could take many forms, and the bonds formed in moments of danger and trust could last a lifetime. They had survived together, grown together, and learned the true power of determination, bravery, and care. The cowboy knew he had been given a gift, not just his life, but the knowledge that courage, compassion, and presence could overcome even the most terrifying challenges. And the woman knew that her actions, though quiet and steady, had made a difference that would never be forgotten. As the night settled over the desert with stars twinkling above, they both felt a sense of completion, of life renewed, and of hope for the future. The journey had been dangerous, exhausting, and frightening, but it had also shown them the strength of the human spirit and the extraordinary impact of one person's bravery. They stood together quietly, letting the peace of the desert fill them, knowing that life was fragile, courage was powerful, and gratitude was eternal. And in that moment, they knew that they had both been changed forever, by fear, by danger, and by the quiet, unwavering bravery that had saved a life.